Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are taking a detailed look at a fascinating piece of American coinage. Coin number 1. This 1946 Jefferson nickel without a mint mark, especially one found in very fine condition. If you have an old Jefferson nickel sitting in a collection, an inherited coin box, or even an old jar of coins, you may be wondering whether that little 5-cent piece could be worth much more than its original face value. In today's video, we are focusing on the 1946 Jefferson nickel, examining its history, design, mint mark situation, condition, important identifying characteristics, and the market value figure of $9,700 being discussed for a very fine example. So stay with us until the end, because there are several details that collectors should know before deciding whether their 1946 nickel is ordinary or potentially valuable. The Jefferson nickel is one of the most recognizable American coins ever produced. It was introduced in 1938 to replace the Buffalo nickel and featured a portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello, Jefferson's famous Virginia home, on the reverse. By 1946, the Jefferson nickel had already become an important part of everyday American commerce. The United States was emerging from World War II. The economy was changing, and American coinage was beginning to return to more familiar production standards after several years of wartime modifications. That historical setting makes a 1946 Jefferson nickel especially interesting to collectors who enjoy coins connected to important periods in American history. One of the first things to notice about the coin in today's discussion is the absence of a mint mark. A 1946 Jefferson nickel without a mint mark was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. For collectors, this is an important identification feature. On many U.S. coins, the absence of a mint mark does not mean the coin is rare by itself. Instead, it tells us where the coin was produced. In the case of the 1946 Jefferson nickel, Philadelphia-produced examples do not carry a mint letter, while coins from other facilities may have a letter identifying their mint of origin. Therefore, when you examine your 1946 nickel, carefully look at the area where a mint mark would normally appear, rather than assuming that every blank space is evidence of an error. The 1946 Jefferson nickel is also historically significant because it belongs to the post-war era of Jefferson nickel production. During World War II, nickel became an important strategic material, and from 1942 through 1945, the composition of the Jefferson nickel was changed. Wartime nickels were made with a special alloy containing silver, copper, and manganese, and they were distinguished by a large mint mark above Monticello on the reverse. The 1946 nickel came immediately after that wartime period, making it part of the transition back to the traditional copper-nickel composition. This historical connection can make a 1946 nickel more interesting to collectors even when the coin itself is not an extreme rarity. Now let's talk about the physical appearance of a 1946 Jefferson nickel. On the obverse, you should see a portrait of Thomas Jefferson facing left. The inscriptions include Liberty, the date 1946, and the phrase "In God We Trust." Because this coin is more than 7 decades old, its appearance can vary dramatically depending on how it was stored and how much circulation it experienced. A heavily circulated example may have flattened details, scratches, discoloration, and a dull surface, while a better preserved coin can retain much stronger detail and attractive original surfaces. Now let's focus specifically on very fine condition, because that is the condition stated for today's example. Very fine, often abbreviated VF, represents a coin that has experienced noticeable circulation but still retains a substantial amount of its original design detail. A very fine 1946 Jefferson nickel should not look brand new. Instead, it should show moderate wear on the highest points of the design while retaining strong overall lettering and recognizable features. Jefferson's hair and facial details will typically show wear, but the portrait should remain clearly defined. When you examine your own 1946 Jefferson nickel, lighting is extremely important. Try using a bright light from different angles rather than examining the coin under a single dim light source. Rotate the coin slowly and watch how the surfaces reflect the light. This can help reveal scratches, contact marks, wear patterns, discoloration, and possible surface damage. However, be careful not to clean the coin. Cleaning an old collectible coin can permanently damage its original surface and may reduce its desirability to serious collectors. Another important point is the difference between natural toning and artificial discoloration. Older nickels can develop different shades depending on their storage environment. You may encounter grey, brown, golden, greenish, or darker-looking surfaces. However, color alone does not automatically make a coin rare or valuable. A coin's value depends on many factors, including date, mint, condition, strike quality, surface preservation, eye appeal, varieties, errors, and actual market demand. So if your 1946 nickel has an unusual color, do not immediately assume that the color itself creates a high value. Collectors should also learn to distinguish wear from damage. Wear occurs naturally when a coin circulates and repeatedly contacts other coins, pockets, machines, and surfaces. Damage can occur through scratches, cleaning, corrosion, harsh chemicals, polishing, drilling, bending, or other forms of alteration. A coin with normal circulation wear may remain collectible, while a similarly aged coin that has been aggressively cleaned may be less desirable. This is why preserving the coin in its original condition is usually the safest approach. Another factor to consider is the coin's edge. The Jefferson nickel has a plain edge, unlike some U.S. coins that feature reeded edges. When inspecting an old nickel, look around the entire edge for unusual damage, cuts, filing, or other signs of alteration. An unusual edge alone does not guarantee an error. Genuine mint errors generally require careful examination and, in valuable cases, professional authentication. The date is another critical identification point. Make sure the coin actually reads 1946. On heavily circulated coins, individual digits can sometimes be difficult to read. A worn 4 or 6 can occasionally create confusion, particularly when the coin is dirty or damaged. Always inspect the date under magnification if necessary. A simple mistake in identifying the date can completely change the value of a coin collection. The absence of a mint mark should also be checked carefully. Do not confuse a missing mint mark with a damaged or altered mint mark. On a Philadelphia 1946 Jefferson nickel, the lack of a mint letter is normal. If you believe you have discovered an unusual mint mark error, such as evidence that a mint mark was removed or altered, professional evaluation may be necessary. Collectors should be especially careful because artificially modified coins can sometimes appear unusual to inexperienced eyes. One of the most exciting parts of coin collecting is the possibility of finding an interesting coin in an unexpected place. Old Jefferson nickels can still turn up in collections, inherited coin jars, antique collections, estate discoveries, and rolls of older coins. While not every old nickel is valuable, searching through coins can be educational and rewarding. You learn to recognize dates, mint marks, varieties, condition differences, and historical connections. The more coins you examine, the better your ability becomes to identify potentially interesting examples. If you are searching for a 1946 Jefferson nickel, pay attention to the overall sharpness of the design. Look at Jefferson's portrait, the lettering, the date, Monticello, and the reverse inscriptions. Then inspect the surfaces under magnification. Look for excessive scratches, unusual die characteristics, cracks, doubled features, or other anomalies. Remember, however, that many apparent doubling or unusual marks are simply caused by circulation damage, machine doubling, die deterioration, or contact marks. A genuine collectible error should be properly identified before assigning it a premium value. The historical story behind the coin is another reason the 1946 Jefferson nickel deserves attention. Think about what was happening in the United States when this coin entered circulation. The Second World War had just ended. Millions of Americans were returning home. Industries were changing from wartime production, and the country was entering a new era. A small 5-cent coin from that period is therefore more than just money. It is a physical object connected to a major chapter of American history. For collectors building a Jefferson nickel collection, the 1946 issue can be an important early post-war date. Jefferson nickels are relatively accessible compared with some famous U.S. rarities, which makes the series attractive to both beginners and experienced collectors. A person does not need an enormous budget to begin collecting them. You can start with common dates and gradually learn how condition, mint marks, varieties, and errors affect value. If you discover one of these coins in your collection, don't rush to clean it, polish it, or alter it. Keep it in a safe holder or protective flip, handle it by the edges, and avoid touching the surfaces unnecessarily. Finger oils and improper storage can affect the coin over time. Good preservation is especially important when dealing with older collectible coins. The most valuable lesson in coin collecting is that knowledge comes before value. Before selling any old coin, identify the date, mint mark, condition, variety, and possible errors. Then, research comparable examples. A coin that looks ordinary at first may have an interesting characteristic, but a coin that looks unusual may simply have damage. Learning the difference is what turns casual coin searching into serious collecting. And remember, coin collecting is not only about finding a valuable piece. Every old coin has a story. The 1946 Jefferson nickel represents a fascinating moment in American history, connecting the everyday world of commerce with the transition from wartime America into the post-war era. That historical story is part of what makes these coins enjoyable to collect. Next, coin number 2. This 1954 Jefferson nickel without a mint mark, especially an example in very fine condition. If you have been searching through an old coin collection, inherited coins, a jar of change, or a box of vintage U.S. coins, you may have come across a 1954 Jefferson nickel and wondered whether it could be worth considerably more than its original 5-cent face value. In today's video, we are going to explore the history, design, mint mark identification, condition, collectible characteristics, and the stated market value $86 for the example discussed in this video. The Jefferson nickel is one of the most familiar coins in American history. First introduced in 1938, it replaced the Buffalo nickel and brought a new design featuring Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello on the reverse. By 1954, the Jefferson nickel had already been circulating for more than a decade, making the 1954 issue an important part of the early history of this long-running coin series. For collectors, these early Jefferson nickels can be fascinating because they connect everyday American commerce with the economic and historical environment of the middle 20th century. One of the most important characteristics of today's coin is that it has no mint mark. This is something every collector should understand before deciding whether a coin is rare. A missing mint mark is not necessarily an error. In the case of the 1954 Jefferson nickel, an example without a mint mark was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. Philadelphia traditionally did not place a mint letter on these nickels during this period, so the blank area where a mint mark might be expected is a normal characteristic of the coin. The 1954 Jefferson nickel is also interesting because of its place in American history. The United States was in the early years of the post-World War II era. The economy was developing rapidly, American manufacturing was expanding, and the country was entering a new period of technological and social change. A small 5-cent coin from 1954 therefore represents more than its face value. It is a physical connection to an important period in 20th century American history. By 1954, the special wartime composition used for Jefferson nickels from 1942 through 1945 had ended. During the war years, nickel was considered strategically important, so the U.S. Mint changed the composition of the 5-cent coin and added large mint marks above Monticello to identify the special wartime issues. The 1954 Jefferson nickel was part of the return to the traditional copper-nickel composition used for regular Jefferson nickels. If you are inspecting your coin at home, use a soft, bright light and examine the coin from different angles. Slowly tilt the nickel and observe how the light moves across the surface. This can reveal scratches, contact marks, wear, and unusual features that may not be obvious under normal room lighting. A simple 5x or 10x magnifying loupe can also help you study small details. Collectors should also pay attention to the mint mark area. Since today's coin is described as having no mint mark, you should understand exactly what that means. On a normal Philadelphia-produced 1954 Jefferson Nickel, the absence of a mint letter is expected. You should not assume that the coin has an error simply because you cannot see a letter. The location and design of the Jefferson Nickel should be studied carefully before making any conclusions. One of the best habits a coin collector can develop is never cleaning valuable-looking coins. It can be tempting to make an old nickel shiny, especially if it looks dark or dirty. But collectible coins are generally valued for their original surfaces, and harsh cleaning can permanently change those surfaces. Instead of polishing the coin, preserve it as you found it and place it in a suitable protective holder. The 1954 Jefferson Nickel also has appeal because it is part of a series that can be collected by date and mint mark. Some collectors try to assemble complete collections covering every year and mint combination. Others focus on varieties, high-grade examples, errors, or historically significant pieces. This flexibility makes the Jefferson Nickel series enjoyable for beginners as well as experienced numismatists. For a beginner, the 1954 nickel can be an excellent coin to study because it teaches several important lessons about numismatics. You can learn how to identify the date, understand mint marks, evaluate circulation wear, examine surfaces, recognize design details, and research market values. These skills can then be applied to other U.S. coins. If you have a 1954 Jefferson Nickel without a mint mark, compare the coin with photographs and descriptions from reliable numismatic references. Pay particular attention to the date and design details. Then determine whether the coin's condition is actually very fine. It is easy to overestimate a coin's condition when you are new to collecting. A professional grade requires careful evaluation of wear and surfaces. The history behind this 1954 Jefferson Nickel makes the coin especially enjoyable to own. Imagine this small nickel entering circulation in the 1950 ES, passing through countless hands, stores, cash registers, and pockets. It may have been used for everyday purchases during a completely different era. Today, that same coin can become part of a collection and serve as a physical reminder of life in mid-century America. This is one of the reasons coin collecting remains such a popular hobby. Coins are small enough to store easily, but each one can contain an enormous amount of history. A 1954 Jefferson Nickel can tell us about American coin design, minting technology, economic history, the post-war period, and the evolution of collecting itself. So, if you have a 1954 Jefferson Nickel without a mint mark, do not immediately spend it or dismiss it as an ordinary 5-cent coin. Take a closer look. Confirm the date. Examine the obverse. Study Jefferson's portrait. Turn the coin over and inspect Monticello. Check the lettering and surfaces. Then evaluate the coin's condition carefully. If your coin has scratches, corrosion, cleaning, or other damage, do not automatically assume that it will match the value of a problem-free, very fine example. Collectors generally distinguish carefully between normal circulation wear and damage. The same date can have very different levels of desirability depending on how well it has survived. Another excellent practice is to keep notes about your collection. Write down the date, mint mark, condition, and where you found each interesting coin. Over time, you can build a detailed record of your collection. This makes it easier to compare coins and track your discoveries. The 1954 Jefferson Nickel is also a reminder that value is not always about age alone. Many old coins are common, while some modern coins can be highly collectible. What matters is the relationship between rarity, condition, demand, varieties, errors, and historical importance. That is why simply finding an old coin does not automatically mean you have found a valuable coin. Next, coin number 3. This 1983 Jefferson Nickel with a P mint mark, described in black condition, with a stated market value of $51 for today's video. If you have an old Jefferson Nickel in your collection, a coin jar, an inherited group of coins, or even a box of change that has been sitting around for decades, you may want to take a closer look before spending it. The 1983 with P Jefferson Nickel is an especially interesting coin for collectors because it comes from an important period in the modern Jefferson Nickel series, and collectors pay close attention to its condition, surfaces, strike quality, mint mark, and possible varieties or errors. The Jefferson Nickel has a fascinating history that stretches back to 1938. It replaced the Buffalo nickel and introduced a portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, along with Monticello on the reverse. Felix Schlag designed the original Jefferson nickel, and his design remained on the coin for decades. The 1983 issue therefore belongs to a long-running and historically important American coin series. When you first look at a 1983 Jefferson nickel, the most important thing is to identify the date correctly. The number 1983 appears on the obverse beneath Jefferson's portrait. Because this coin is now more than 4 decades old, some circulated examples can show significant wear, scratches, discoloration, and other signs of use. A magnifying glass or coin loop can make it much easier to confirm the date and inspect the smaller details. The second important feature is the P mint mark. On a 1983 with P Jefferson nickel, the letter P identifies the Philadelphia Mint. The mint mark is located on the obverse, near the area associated with Jefferson's portrait. If you have a 1983 nickel, carefully check this location rather than assuming that every 1983 example came from Philadelphia. There were also 1983 with D business strikes and 1983 S proofs, so the mint designation is an important part of identifying the exact coin. The 1983 with P nickel was struck in the traditional copper-nickel composition used for regular Jefferson nickels of this period. PCGS lists the regular 1983 with P Jefferson nickel as containing 75% copper and 25% nickel, with a weight of 5 grams and a diameter of 21.20 millimeters. It has a plain edge. These specifications can be useful if you are trying to authenticate a coin or compare it with another example. Now let's discuss the unusual phrase black condition used for today's coin. In coin collecting, color descriptions such as black, dark, brown, or toned are not themselves standardized grades like good, very fine, extremely fine, about uncirculated, or mint state. A dark or black appearance may come from natural toning, environmental exposure, dirt, corrosion, storage conditions, or other surface effects. Therefore, when evaluating a 1983 Jefferson nickel, it is important to look beyond the color and determine the actual physical condition of the coin. That difference is extremely important. When someone says that a coin is worth $51, collectors should ask, what grade is it? Is it certified? Does it have an error? Does it have a recognized variety? Does it have full steps on Monticello? Are the surfaces original? Has the coin been cleaned? Is the price based on an actual completed sale or simply an asking price? These questions help separate realistic numismatic value from exaggerated claims. There is another important lesson here. Mintage and rarity are not always the same thing. A coin can have a large mintage and still have valuable high-grade examples if very few coins survive with exceptional preservation. Conversely, a coin with a relatively low mintage may still be affordable if demand is limited. Understanding this distinction is essential for anyone learning about coin values. When searching through your collection, you should therefore avoid assuming that every 1983 with P nickel is valuable. Instead, look for the characteristics that separate an ordinary example from a potentially collectible one. Start with the date and mint mark. Then examine condition, strike quality, surfaces, reverse steps, possible varieties, and unusual minting characteristics. If you think your nickel has an error, do not immediately sell it based on an online photograph. First determine whether the feature actually occurred at the US. Mint. A scratch made after the coin left the mint is not a mint error. A dent caused by circulation is not a mint error. Damage caused by machinery after production is also different from a genuine die or striking error. A professional examination can be especially useful when an unusual feature appears on a coin. Authentication and grading services can determine whether a coin is genuine and provide a standardized grade. This can be particularly important if you believe the coin could be worth significantly more than face value. The story of the Jefferson Nickel also makes this hobby fascinating. Think about how many transactions a 1983 nickel may have been part of. It could have been used in a vending machine, a store, a restaurant, a parking meter, or someone's pocket. It traveled through an America that looked very different from today. Today, that same little coin can become part of a collection and provide a tangible connection to the early 1980s. If you are building a Jefferson Nickel collection, the 1983 with P issue can be included alongside other dates and mint marks. Some collectors collect one example of every year. Others try to collect every mint combination. Some focus on high-grade full steps coins, while others specialize in errors and varieties. There is no single correct way to collect Jefferson Nickels. The word black is especially important to interpret carefully. If the coin has a genuinely dark, natural tone but still has attractive surfaces and strong details, that is one situation. If the coin is black because of corrosion, environmental damage, or chemical treatment, that is another. The source of the color matters. This is why professional examination can sometimes be valuable. If your 1983 with P nickel is exceptionally sharp, do not assume it is automatically worth $51 or more. Instead, inspect it carefully for evidence of circulation. Tiny contact marks can affect a coin's grade. Luster can also be important. A truly uncirculated coin should retain its original mint characteristics, rather than merely looking shiny because it has been polished. This is another reason cleaning should be avoided. A polished coin may look bright, but can actually be less desirable to collectors. Original mint luster is very different from an artificial shine produced by polishing. Once the original surface is damaged, it generally cannot be restored to its original condition. If you are watching this video because you found a 1983 with P Jefferson Nickel in an old collection, take your time. Do not rush to sell it. Photograph both sides under good lighting, record the weight if you have an accurate scale, and compare the coin with reliable references. If you believe there is a valuable error or unusually high grade, seek a professional opinion. The most exciting part of collecting is not simply finding a coin with a high price tag. It is learning why one coin is different from another. A regular 1983 with P Jefferson Nickel may be common, but a superbly preserved specimen or a genuine mint error can be much more interesting. Understanding those distinctions is what makes numismatics such a rewarding hobby. If your coin is simply an ordinary circulated 1983 with P nickel, current reference sources indicate that it may be worth little more than face value. But if your example has exceptional preservation, full steps, or a genuine mint error, the situation can be very different. This is exactly why collectors inspect these coins so carefully. And that brings us to the biggest lesson of today's video. Never judge a coin only by its date. Look at the mint mark, condition, strike, surfaces, varieties, errors, and overall quality. A common date can become much more interesting when it survives in exceptional condition or carries a genuine mint-made error. If you enjoyed this detailed exploration of the 1983 with P Jefferson Nickel, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos about valuable U.S. coins, Jefferson Nickels, Washington quarters, Lincoln cents, Roosevelt dimes, Kennedy half dollars, mint errors, rare varieties, and coins that may be hiding in old collections. Before you leave, take another look at your own coin collection. Check your nickels carefully. Look at the dates. Look for the P, D, and S mint marks. Examine Monticello and the steps. Search for unusual features, but remember to verify them before assigning a high value. And if you have a dark or black-looking 1983 with P Jefferson Nickel, don't clean it just because the surface looks unusual. Preserve it exactly as you found it and investigate its condition first. Sometimes, the most interesting discoveries come from coins that initially look ordinary or even unattractive. Thank you very much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed this detailed exploration of the 1983 Jefferson Nickel, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos about old U.S. coins, rare Jefferson Nickels, Lincoln cents, Washington quarters, Roosevelt dimes, Kennedy half dollars, mint marks, valuable varieties, and interesting coins that could be hiding in collections around the country.